This is 5 on 20 News, where the news is up to the minute and the newscasters are up to no good, with Anias Quintella
and Luke Goodhart, coming to you live from our studio in downtown Tucson.
First, the local headlines.
Disgraced Sheriff Joe Arpaio has left his replacement with some strange decisions to make. Paul Penzoni, who beat Arpaio in last week's election, is undecided on how he will proceed with some of Arpaio's more eccentric practices. So far, Penzoni has decided to ditch the investigation into President Obama's birth certificate. Arpaio, who says he was on the cusp of solving the mystery, is criticizing that move. Taking a cue from our president-elect, Penzoni will remove pink underwear against another's wishes. Arpaio had outfitted his prisoners with pink underwear to serve as a shaming device. The sheriff also housed the prisoners in tent camps, which activist groups said was inhumane. Penzoni hasn't yet decided if he will keep the tent cities.
The FBI released its Uniform Crime Report for 2016, which documents the most dangerous cities and states in the U.S. And we have some exciting winners. Tennessee emerged at the top with 643 violent crimes for every 100,000 people. Memphis has consistently scored in the top 5 for highest murder rate over the past 10 years, and they're still going strong. Arizona did not crack the top 5, ending up in the somewhat lackluster 15th spot. We are more dangerous than California, but Alabama ranks higher. We'll have to try harder next year. But the brightest spot is that Tucson emerged as the most dangerous city in Arizona with the highest violent crime rate in the state. Congrats, Tucson! Late in the evening, the city celebrated by coordinating a synchronized carjacking with car alarms sounding out the melody to We Are the Champions.
The city of Tucson is considering a half-cent sales tax to raise funds for public safety and improving roads. 3 town halls will be held this week to gain voter input on the bill. The city estimates that the raise in sales tax would cost Tucsonans $3 a month, about the price of a year's subscription to Pornhub. We know you can make the sacrifice, Tucson. If the sales tax is enacted, voters may have the chance to extend it beyond the initial 5 years. Over 5 years, the sales tax will raise $250 million, with $150 going to fire and police and the other $100 used to fix roads. Tucson roads have been labeled some of the worst in the country, while the fire department suffered 2 malfunctions of their fire engines. 1 year of Pornhub, folks. That's it. The first town hall is happening right now at William M. Clements Center. Future town halls are being held Thursday, November 17th at the Ward 6 office and Monday, November 21st at El Pueblo Senior Center. All town halls begin at 5:30 p.m.
And did you know Trump's chief strategist, Steve Bannon, has ties to Biosphere 2? The former investment banker and executive chairman of far-right, dare we say racist, news organization Breitbart also has history in Arizona. He worked for Biosphere 2 in the 1990s. Like everything in Bannon's life, Biosphere 2 was not free of scandal. The science project history included lawsuits for trespassing and breach of contract. And now in international and national news.
As we track the revolving door of Trump's transition team, the Donald himself is taking to Twitter to lambaste the media and assure the public that all is well. Trump tweeted this morning to say that his team is working long hours and meeting with many great candidates. Yesterday, Trump said the New York Times is failing, and he criticized their coverage, which suggested the transition was less than smooth. On Tuesday, he tweeted about how organized the process of filling positions has been. Those comments come as the media, not just the New York Times, reports ongoing infighting in Trump Tower. That alleged chaos and a slew of firings has meant confusion and delays for the president-elect. Foreign leaders have reported difficulties getting in touch with Trump, and the transition team has yet to contact the Pentagon, State Department, or other federal agencies. Normally, a president-elect's landing team would have been expected to arrive in D.C. on Monday of this week. But Vice President-elect Mike Pence, who is also running the transition team after Chris Christie was booted, has yet to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Obama administration. Pence's signature would allow for a transition to begin. That piece of paperwork was expected in Washington on Tuesday. As of Wednesday night, it had not been submitted. So either Trump's tweets about how easy the process has been are outright lies, or he just doesn't know what's going on. I don't know which is worse.
Well, it looks like someone else is going to benefit from a Donald Trump presidency besides grand wizards and 80s sitcom stars. Executives at Morgan Stanley made more than $10 million by selling shares of the investment bank. CEO James Gorman made $2.9 million in one day by exercising shares options as the bank's stock rose by $15 per share. Options involved selling a held stock at a higher price sometime later. Gorman's move implies that he knew the stock would rise upon the election of Donald Trump. Banking stocks in particular have risen since Trump's election, mainly due to Trump's promise of massive infrastructure spending and his pledge to destroy Dodd-Frank. Yet the bond market continues to slump due to fears over inflation because of the excess spending. The yield of a bond usually indicates the future economic health of a country, with higher yields meaning a higher risk for inflation. Yields for U.S. Treasuries have raised nearly 0.5% over the past week, a frightening sign of the danger to come if you're not a bank. But the soaring stocks of investment banks show that Trump will usher in an America where investment banks, hedge funds, and private equity firms will finally have a chance at the American dream. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
And Bob Dylan might not be attending the Nobel Prize ceremony. The 75-year-old singer-songwriter says that he will not be able to visit Stockholm to pick up his prize because he has, quote, pre-existing commitments. Dylan later expanded upon this statement, explaining that a new episode of Empire will be airing, and he planned a viewing party with Bruce Springsteen and Joni Mitchell. This isn't the first time that a recipient has declined showing up for the Nobel Prize. In 1974, Vietnamese revolutionary Lo Duc Tho refused to share the stage with fellow winner Henry Kissinger, because Lo claimed that Kissinger violated a truce during the Vietnam War. Despite your opinion on whether Dylan should show up or not, I think we can all agree this is the most Bob Dylan thing ever. Reportedly, in his place, Dylan will send Soy Bomb to receive the award.
Salvador Dali's book, Les Dîners de Gala, is being reprinted for the first time in 43 years. The hallucinatory tome details one of the many lavish and surreal dinner parties the artist threw with his wife, Gala. The book was originally printed in 1973, 32 years after the dinner it documents, and now art book publisher Taschen is making Dali's work accessible to all of us again. Until now, only a few hundred super expensive first editions were available. As you might expect, this is not your average cookbook. More fever dream than classic fare, 136 recipes are featured, including a fish plated inside satin slippers and jumpy frogs being served inside metal cloche purses. Those outlandish recipes are listed alongside food photographs and original Dali illustrations. Images from the book will certainly result in more than a few Pinterest users getting calloused fingers from furious repinning. Let's drink in a few for ourselves.
And I wanted to take a moment to talk about the program you're watching right now. Here at 5 on 20, we are undertaking a new kind of citizen journalism. We are going to give you the news as we see it, and we want more people to speak up with us. We need writers, hosts, anchors, camera people, sound people, the whole gamut. The times require a new way of informing ourselves, so join us. Do it. Do it now. Email us at info@creativetucson.org to get involved.
This was Anies Quintella
and Luke Goodhart for 5 on 20 News.
In our next segment, Sean talks dead people. But first, let's decompress with a sweet video of Stevie Nicks singing Wild Heart in her backstage dressing room in 1981.
are, again, another week and several more deaths. Life is for the living, death is for the dead. Let life be the music, and death a note unsaid. Actually, that quote I just screwed up, Langston Hughes said that. So today, in an all-female rendition of Shaun Sees Dead People, that's me, I'm Shaun, I'm going to talk about a saint, some sinners, and a book award winner. So let's go. On this day, in the year 680 AD, Hilda of Whitby died at the age of 66 after a 7-year fever. So Hilda was a princess when she was born into the royal family of Daria, which is basically northern England, and her grandfather was the king's brother. As an infant, her father would be poisoned to death while living in exile at the court of the British king of Elmet, which is also in England. So another death, essentially. At the age of 33, still claiming to be a virgin, she consecrated her life/virginity to God and became a nun. While living a life of virtue, she was also a badass boss lady. As a landowner, she had many people working for her in many of her various enterprises, including livestock and lumber. She was also the founding abbess, aka boss lady, of the then called Strathonshall Abbey, which was later dedicated to Hilda and renamed the Whitby Abbey, which later fell to ruins. Why even go back this far in history, you ask? Because stories from this long ago tend to have a touch of magic that intrigues me. And supposedly the reason that seabirds dip their wings into the ocean as they fly over the abbey is to pay respect to the saint. There are also some fossilized ammonoids near Whitby Abbey that don't look all that much like snakes, but they are attributed to a legend of a plague of snakes, to which St. Hilda responded by magically transforming them to stone. That sculpture you just saw was a relief, or there's a sculpture actually that's a relief sculpture of St. Hilda standing on snakes and seabirds. So, from the virtuous virgin to a legendary lust. Also on this day, in 1796, Catherine the Great died from a stroke at the age of 67. Talk about a boss lady. She was one of the longest reigning emperors of Russia, and her rumored and unrelenting sexual appetite was probably due to the fact that she took on many young lovers, even into old age. She would often promote these young lovers to high-ranking positions in the court or positions of royalty. Catherine the Great was said to have two great passions, the love of a man and glory. Judging by her reign and the notches in her bedpost, we should assume that she lived abundantly. I just have to tell you about the erotic cabinet that I discovered. Supposedly, this room was adjacent to her suite of rooms in one of her castles, and the furniture left quite an impression. There were large and detailed statues of a naked lady and a naked man. The tables had large penises for legs, and penises and vaginas were carved into the furniture wherever the eye could see. The walls were covered in erotic art, and some erotic artifacts from Pompeii were brought to Russia to augment this collection. There are alleged photographs of this room, I should say, and Russian eyewitness reports have described the interior, but Russian authorities have always been very secretive about this peculiar Tsarist heritage. The rooms and the furniture were seen in 1941 by two Wehrmacht officers, but they seem to have vanished since then. So here's a table that was said to have come from the secret room, and sure enough, penis legs and boobs for testicles. It's pretty great. Given these rumors, it's no wonder that another great untruth befell the legend of Catherine the Great, and that rumor is of her death. You may have heard that a result of her insatiable sexual cravings, as a result of them, she died while attempting to fornicate with a stallion. This just ain't true. At 9 a.m. in the morning, after a relentless night on November 16th, Catherine the Great walked into her dressing room and collapsed. So it was later determined that she had a stroke. So if you're disappointed that the horse legend isn't true, well, here's a scandal that is. On this day in 1972, Barbara Daly Bakeland was stabbed to death by her own son at the age of 50. Most of what I know about her comes from the 2007 film Savage Grace, starring Julianne Moore. She married Brooks Bakeland, who was the son of the Bakelite inventor Leo Bakeland. Maybe you know what Bakelite is, maybe you don't, but it's an early plastic and a thermosetting phenol formaldehyde resin formed from a condensation reaction of phenol with formaldehyde. Used for jewelry and other fun stuff, it might actually be the world's most collectible plastic, although it's often a blanket term used to describe a number of early plastics, including Catalin and Fataran. But back to Barbara. According to the movie, she was rumored to be quite graceful and an exceptional hostess. The gossip is that she was also quite the social climber. Again, according to the movie, she suffered a few nervous breakdowns after her divorce from Brooks Bakeland, which left her and her son Anthony to their idle musings. Being kind of aristocratic, neither Barbara nor Anthony never really worked, but she maybe took up painting at one point, and he was often rumored to be gallivanting around the world with his male lovers. Because her son was gay or bisexual, Barbara often tried to cure him by hiring female prostitutes to have sex with him. This didn't seem to work, so she tried having sex with him herself. From what I can tell, this might have resulted in a schizophrenia diagnosis for Anthony, the son, which after at least one separate attempt, he successfully murdered his mother by stabbing her to death. And now for something less frivolous. On this day in 1992, Audre Lorde died at the age of 58 after struggling with liver cancer that followed breast cancer. She was a formative thinker and theorist of 20th century feminism, and me with my white presenting cis male gaze might classify her as an early fourth wave feminist. Indulge me for a second as I reduce or mansplain the four waves of feminism to bite-sized morsels. First wave is mostly about women's rights to vote. Second wave is mostly about equal pay and reproductive rights and the great and lasting struggle for women to be allowed to have credit cards. Third wave feminism is the revolt against the patriarchy and the devaluation of masculine power structures, essentially all power structures, and the violence they perpetrate against women. Fourth wave feminism finally brings attention to the many ways in which feminism overlaps with other identity politics such as race, class, gender, religion, and sexuality. This is where I think Audre Lorde fits in. While self-identifying as a 49-year-old black lesbian feminist socialist, mother of two, she often critiqued feminism for its shortcomings in favor of the womanist movement. Womanism, said to be coined by author and poet Alice Walker, was an attempt to distinguish the black female and minority female experience from feminism. From Audre Lorde's age, race, class, sex, women redefining difference, which is a selection of short writings, as white women ignore their built-in privilege of whiteness and define woman in terms of their own experience alone, then women of color become other. From my point of view, this widespread philosophy seems so ubiquitous in day-to-day life, and it has me thinking that Lorde is a pioneer and a hero, an American hero. Her message has made a visible impact on the experience of so many women living today. That's my justification for calling her a hero. In her dying days, Lorde penned the Cancer Journals, which chronicled her battle with breast cancer and then liver cancer. The book went on to win the American Library Association Gay Caucus Book of the Year Award in 1981. Don't hate me for using the same quote as Wikipedia because I had to. It was just so good. While discussing the Cancer Journals for the documentary A Litany for Survival, The Life and Work of Audre Lorde, she says, "What I leave behind has a life of its own. I've said this about poetry. I've said it about children. Well, in a sense, I'm saying it about the very artifact of who I have been." So, are you guys familiar with these women?
I was familiar with none of them.
Really? You haven't heard of Catherine the Great?
I feel like I've heard it mentioned, but I would have never been able to list who she was or anything that she did.
Right. But, so you've never heard the rumor then that she died having sex with a horse?
I didn't hear that rumor.
So she's the original Mr. Hands.
Yeah.
Or not, as it may be. Where do I get one of those tables that Catherine the
Right?
Great had, though?
know.
That was fabulous.
Make replicas of those and
Absolutely.
just sell them on eBay.
So out of the 4, I'm going to say no to being a virgin until 33.
Agreed.
But like turning snakes into stone and like having kind of
That
magical
part might have
powers
been
a little
cool.
bit.
That's pretty cool.
I'm going to say no to the multiple forms of cancer.
Right.
I'm going to say no to having sex with your son and then being stabbed to death by him.
Right.
And I
So,
think it would be pretty cool to
Catherine the
die
Great,
surrounded by penises and vaginas carved
Right,
into
yeah,
things.
that's
so
After
best
a pretty
life, best
wild
death.
I think
night.
that's the best one. Yeah.
Easily.
We're all in agreement then.
We're all in agreement.
Catherine the Great.
Thank you all. That was this week's Sean Sees Dead People Death Report. See you next week.